It is caught. Jelani Woods, touchdown, INDY.
43-point night for Tyrese Halliburton.
How do you like that, partner?
Galloway drives all the way to the hole, throws it up, got it! And Indiana's got their first lead of this contest.
It's pretty simple. I win. Google me.
Now, here's your host, Jim Coyle.
Hey, everybody. Welcome aboard. Thanks a lot for joining us here on this edition of Indiana Sports Beat Radio. Happy Valentine's Day to everybody on this Wednesday, February 14th. Looking forward to another fun day. Dylan Sinn from the Fort Wayne Journal-Gazette will be joining us. Kyle Neddenriep from the Indy Star and Rick Bozich from WDRB.com will also, and plenty of other things to talk about. Appreciate everybody jumping up on the Andy Moore Honda hotline early and often. And of course, Indiana Sports Beat Radio is powered by Andy Moore Honda. Just go to andymoorehonda.com to get more to your door. Fred jumping on from Easton. Fozon from Amman, Jordan. Russell said he looked up John the Producer's podcast yesterday and got beauty tips, beauty products. And he didn't appreciate that.
I saw that
he's already
comment
beautiful.
too. I saw that comment too, but I don't really know what he's talking about. Give me some context, Russell. I'm curious what you're referring to.
Along the way, let's see, who asked if Russell also asked if Amman, Jordan is a dangerous place to Fozon, and he responded, yes, if you drive on the left side of the streets like the Brits, which I thought was pretty funny. Doug from Lagodi as well. Gary says he has neighbors from Jordan. Well, that's unusual. Michael, John on as well. Appreciate you, everybody. Shenanigans. And Justin, JB, Kevin from Jeffersonville. Carl, IU baseball versus number 12 Duke, 11 a.m. on ESPN Plus. Is that today? I posted that yesterday on Twitter that their opening weekend games. I was thinking Friday was their first game. But is that today? I'll have to look that up, or I'm sure Carl will tell me here in a second. But Friday, it is Friday. Okay, yeah. Indiana baseball is opening the season this weekend. I posted that yesterday on Twitter with the links to the games. You could all catch all of them on ESPN Plus. If you want to watch baseball and get a good start on the season, you can do so. Mike Shenanigans pointing out that Indiana State went down last night, and they were a 17.5-point favorite. And I got to tell you, I happened to see our buddy, your old friend, Dan Dockage. I saw him post that they're going to get their butt beat yesterday. And damn it, if he wasn't right. I was more curious about, and then I asked, and I didn't check to see if I got an answer back, but I was curious as to what would happen with Marquette and Butler. Butler was getting 4.5. Let's pull all that up and just to see scores from last night. As a matter of fact, I know that North Carolina went down to Syracuse. Big win. The fans stormed the court. Kentucky is able to get by Chris Beard and Ole Miss at home, 75-63. Kentucky allowing 78 points a game. That is either the most or the second most in Division I basketball, I believe, or maybe all of basketball. Marquette does win the Butler game by 6. So they were right on it. Man, what a great game that would have been to be at up at Hinkle Fieldhouse. Syracuse knocking off North Carolina, number 7 North Carolina, like I said, 86-79. And here's a team that you better watch out for. Another team out of the, although Mike DeCourcy disagrees with me, another team out of the Big 12, Iowa State. I didn't mention them yesterday. Well, the other day, there was when the AP Top 25 poll came out, and I looked. I said, "Man, there's 13 teams in there that I see that can make the Final Four." I wasn't even considering Iowa State, and I remember skipping over them, and I shouldn't have. They beat Cincinnati on the road last night, 68-59. That's a solid win. You talk about consistency. They scored 34 points in both halves. Baylor, number 12 Baylor, they beat number 25 Oklahoma. Oklahoma will be dropping out of the top 25, 79-62. In the Big Ten, Illinois demolishes Michigan at home, 97-68. Dayton continues their winning ways. They're 20-4 now, number 16 in the country. They beat Duquesne 75-59. Number 17, Creighton, easily over Georgetown 94-72. Number 19, BYU, squeaks by Central Florida 90-88. Number 20, Wisconsin, gets off the snide. They had the perfect elixir, a home game against Ohio State. Boy, had they lost that game, they may have just had to run Greg Gard out of town. 62-54 slugfest. That had to be fun to watch. Man, that had to be like watching paint dry. Ohio State, you know how many points they scored in the entire first half? 21. I mean, that had to be just an awful game to be at, much less watch. Pittsburgh goes on the road and upsets number 21 Virginia at 74-63. And like I said, you got to give Dan credit. Illinois State not only beats Indiana State, they kick their butt. And that's more what Dan said was going to happen. And he was right. So there's that. And that's that. Games on tap for tonight. In the Big Ten, you got Minnesota at Purdue. Should be not much of a challenge. Temple is visiting our friend Dusty May in Florida Atlantic, and Pepperdine at St. Mary's. So very light schedule tonight after a quality list last night.
Hold on, I don't think that's fully correct because I'm looking at the slate of games right now.
I was going to say that's all
Michigan
State
the
top 25
with the Big Ten. No, that doesn't even include. I don't know if that's Thursday or what day you're looking. Yeah, you're looking at Thursday. Today's Wednesday.
Yes,
tonight's slate of games. There are no top
South
25
Carolina
matchups, but in the Big Ten, you do have Michigan State at Penn State on the Big Ten Network, followed by Iowa at Maryland, also on the Big Ten Network.
Well, but over in the SEC, you've got number 11 South Carolina traveling to number 13 Auburn. That ought to be a hell of a game. Number 1 UConn is on the road at DePaul, and number 8 Tennessee travels to Arkansas. So a couple SEC games to keep an eye on with Tennessee on the road and South Carolina and Auburn. There's you a game right there to watch. As South Carolina 21-3 on this season. That ain't bad in that conference. That's not bad at all. Pretty good start for them. Robert says if Butler just keeps playing hard by virtue of being in the Big East, they should get into the NCAA. Very, very, very possible. But you got to win games. which they have. They've had a good season. Don't get me wrong. They're number 49 in KenPom right now, I think. So they're rolling. They're rolling. Yeah, you could see Purdue and Butler. That's probably it. Am I meant from the state that will be in the tournament this year? Not a good year for the state, much less for the bigger schools. Notre Dame and Indiana both will be sitting at home when that comes around. Of course, Notre Dame in the first season under Micah Shrewsbury. Looking at some of these comments, Justin says Gabe Cupps is a player that Matt Painter would love to have. I'm not sure if that's being facetious or serious. Yes, Michael, as we said, it is tomorrow. I was reading the wrong day. Justin pointed out that Indiana State will be an 8 or 9 seed. Yeah, probably about right. But they were a 17.5 point favorite last night, man. Got to give Dan props. He was all over that and well in advance. Should have listened. That would have been a moneymaker. Taking him on the money line. Looking forward to talking to Dylan Sinn today, of course. Kyle Neddenriep, when he joins us. The IHSAA is really looking at seeding football. Now, not all of football right now, and we'll go over that more in depthly when Kyle joins us, but it's the first step in something that needs to happen. You know, and I'm just seeing out of the corner of my eye something playing. Some people, announcers, just I don't know, are not pleasant to my ear. There's very few of them, actually, but there is one. He's not an announcer per se, more of a sideline reporter or whatever. It's Marty Smith. And I think a big part of it is because I think he leans on that Southern accent thing a little bit too much. I think someone told him, hey, you know what? Finally, it used to be you had to get rid of that. And then for what he was doing, working in the SEC a lot, I think somebody said, hey, man, that works really well here. So let's really go with that. But, yeah, I'm not a fan. Not a fan of listening to that. But I am a fan of Dylan Sinn, and we've got him coming up next. Right after this, brought to you by our good friends from Hoosier Hanks East, located off of College Mall Road in Bloomington. Best thin crust pizza in town. They got much more than pizza, but I'm telling you, the best thin crust pizza in town. Ask for the Jimbo special when you go in. I'm telling you, it is the best pizza, period. It's awesome. Now, we got lots more coming up on this beautiful Valentine's Day. Back with all that and more right after this.
We'll be right back for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Good day.
Sir, how are you?
Just peachy. Dan Dockage, I've got to find my post. Yesterday I happened to see on Twitter, someone had asked him about something, and he said, I think it was about Indiana State. They said, what do you think about Indiana State? He goes, well, they're going to get their butt kicked tonight. And so I looked it up, and they were a 17.5 point favorite. And they got their butt kicked last night.
They did, yeah.
I'm like, damn, he just flat called that out.
Coach Schertz came out after the game and said his team played like a lazy, entitled group of players.
That reminds me of somebody.
They were Illinois State hit what? Didn't they hit like 15 threes or something like that? It was nuts.
Who did?
Illinois State, the team that beat Indiana State.
Oh, they hit 15 threes?
Something like that. Let's see. What did I say? Well, I'm thinking of a different game. Never mind. No, they were only 4 for. No. It was Indiana State missed their first 16 3-pointers. And they're a good 3-point shooting team. 16 in a row to start the game. That's crazy. At home, too.
Oh, that game was at home?
Yeah.
It'd be hard to find that up on Dan's Twitter because he's only posted about 6,000 times since then.
Mm-hmm.
He's a poster now.
Oh. Oh, boy. You should be thanking me, Jim. The fact that I'm awake, I was up till 5 a.m. addressing cards for wedding invitations. So you should be thankful that I'm awake. Yeah,
Whoa, wait. You're engaged?
I am engaged, yes.
I don't know that I knew that.
Really? Well, I am engaged, yes.
I don't know that I knew you had a sig off in general. All right, here we go, guys.
What?
Just a few seconds. I just shortened the word significant other.
Butcher, baker, and fish house, no matter where you live.
This segment is brought to you by the Chop Shop, home of the Indiana football and men's basketball coaches shows. Welcome back to Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Welcome back, Indiana Sports Beat Radio here on this Wednesday. Thanks a lot for joining us. Dylan Sinn from the Fort Wayne Journal-Gazette now. And we're at that point of the season, man. It's time to start being serious about the end of the year for everybody. The Big Ten, there's not a lot to talk about, to be completely honest with you. Wisconsin was in it right up until the game that they had at home against Purdue that was very, very close, but they let slip away. And it seemed like that took all of the wind out of their sails, and they went on a 4-game losing streak, and luckily had Ohio State stop by in Madison last night to put an end to that. But man, I've never seen a team that's played so well, so consistently throughout the season and be sitting in such a position. It's like they ran off the end of the cliff.
Yeah, like it really is. And like, I didn't think they were all that good to begin with. I know that AJ Storr is a very good player and all that, but they were playing very, very well, and they were playing good basketball. And then it wasn't just that they lost 4 in a row against decent teams. They went out and they lost to Rutgers and they lost to Michigan. Those are 2 of the worst teams in the whole Big Ten. Like it was kind of crazy. Did you know now that Rutgers has? I think this is still true. Let me make sure before I say this that this is still true. But Rutgers has the number 2 defense in the country, according to Ken Pom. I looked that up after they beat Wisconsin. They have the number 2 defense in the entire country by efficiency. That is nuts considering how they started the season. Steve Peichel there every single year gets that team whipped into shape by February. That's kind of crazy. And they're still not good. Their offense is horrendous, but their defense is very good. And then Michigan pulled out one of the most improbable victories of the whole season against Wisconsin. And then last night lost by 30 to Illinois. So it seems like it was not the start of a late season renaissance for the Wolverines, and was just kind of like, well, we got our one win, and then we're going back underground.
Yeah, crazy, but also some great games last night.
Yeah.
Kentucky, not one of those, but they get a win over Ole Miss. There's also the fans are not happy in Lexington, even though the Wildcats were ranked 22nd currently. They were number 6 before they went on a big slide.
Yeah, I mean they lost 3 in a row at Rupp, which is the first time that it happened since I think 1967. So like it's been a while for Kentucky there, and it just their offense has not been as crisp as I think people wanted it to be. Calipari tried something different on offense this year because he felt like it was getting stale a little bit what he was doing. And it has been mildly successful, but there have been some growing pains there. And I think that the fans are kind of unhappy with the way that that's developed. I mean, they're still going to make the tournament, I think, but it's been kind of fits and starts with what they want to do there. So yeah, Kentucky, not the kind of juggernaut people thought they would be early in the season, I think.
And that doesn't matter. It's what you are at the end of the season. And I'm not sure that, where they'll end up, but we've got a pretty good indication of who's who. But I looked at this week's top 25, and I said 13, I should have said 14 teams that I see that can easily make the Final Four without any surprise at all. And I just don't recall ever thinking that before, ever.
It's really funny that you say 14, because I don't think they're the same 14 as me. But when I was making my AP poll this week, because I am an AP voter, I got through like 1 through 14. I was like, I'm pretty solid on these 14. And then the next 11, I was like, I have no idea. Like I went through and I had to really puzzle out who those next 11 would be. But I thought the top 14 are relatively easy. No, they're probably not the same 14 as you had, but I do think that it's that kind of year where there are probably a dozen or more teams that really have a chance to make a run into the Final Four. And I think that that's going to create some really exciting March games, especially in that Sweet 16 Elite 8 round. It's been, in my experience covering the tournament, those are some of the best games, is the Sweet 16 and Elite 8. That's where you get good on good the most often, which is kind of crazy. There have been times with not last year, but there have been times with the Final Four and the championship game have been kind of a letdown. You get those Elite 8 games, man. It's exciting. So yeah, I think it should be really fun. I do think still that Purdue and UConn are kind of a cut above everyone else. I know that people are going to laugh at Purdue being in that sentence, but they are, in my opinion. And UConn is crazy to think that UConn lost 3 starters from a national championship team and is just kind of right back where they were. So I think that those two are the best teams I've seen this season. That doesn't mean either of them is going to win the national championship, but I do think that those two are the best teams I've seen this season.
Yeah, there are. UConn is without question up there. You have to put Purdue up there. But all right, so here's a question, and it's not to knock on Purdue, but they're the only team that's like this that I can think of. Who is obviously Zach Edey's the best big man in the country. Who's the second best big man in the country?
That's a good question. There are a bunch of people that you could make a case for. I mean, in the Big Ten, like I'm trying to go through the teams that I've seen this year. I mean, because Edey is so far ahead of everyone else in terms of points and rebounds as a big man that it kind of crowds everyone out. But yeah, I mean, it's not like guard where you have like 15 guys you can point to and say, he could be an All-American. He could be an All-American. He could be an All-American. Edey is the guy at center in a way that I don't think you see at guard.
No, he is. And that makes this question hard to finish. But if you took Zach Edey out of that spot, is there anybody that you could put in that place and Purdue would be still where they are today?
Yes, that's interesting. That's interesting. I mean, the closest he plays such a different style than everyone else too, is the thing.
And you could have said the same thing for Indiana last year with Trace Jackson Davis.
Oh yeah, absolutely. But Edey plays such a different style than everyone else. I mean, we talked about UConn. Donovan Clingan from UConn is 7'2", and he's great. To be clear, he's had some injury issues this year, but he's great. And he just plays a different style than Zach Edey does, though. He's not kind of the back to the basket, I'm going to bully my way to the rim and dunk over the top of you. He's a different kind of guy, but he's still a very good player. It's just a different type of player. And UConn doesn't ask him to do quite as much because they have so much talent around him. Now, I'm not saying Purdue doesn't have talent, to be clear. They absolutely do. But Edey is such an integral part of that team in a way that I don't think any other big man is. Now, there are guards who run the show for teams like Zach Edey kind of runs the show for Purdue. Boo Buie is the first one that comes to mind, where he is the sun, moon, and stars for Northwestern. But then there are a lot of guys like that. I think AJ Storr for Wisconsin, we talked about earlier, was a little bit like that for early in the season. I think teams have kind of figured out Wisconsin a little bit, but no, Edey is one of one in terms of not only the way he plays and the impact he has on the game. Now, what makes Purdue a little bit vulnerable going into the tournament, and will continue to make them vulnerable, is that Edey needs the ball, needs someone to get him the ball in order to be effective, at least offensively, right? He cannot, like Trace Jackson Davis last year, would dribble the ball up the court and would dribble into a post-up. Like, he could get his own post-up, essentially. Zach Edey cannot do that. He needs someone to pass him the ball. And that's usually for Purdue, that's not the most difficult thing in the world. They run really good actions to get post feeds and clear out the whole side of the court and get Zach Edey the ball. But what happened last year, late in the season and then in the tournament, was teams really, really, really denied Zach Edey the ball. And Purdue at times tried to force the ball into him, and they got those outlet pass, or those post entries stolen on a pretty regular basis late in the season. And that has not been nearly as much of a problem this year, despite playing some teams that would have loved to have denied Zach Edey the ball and tried desperately to deny Zach Edey the ball. And so I think that's where Purdue is better this year, is that when teams are taking Zach Edey away, they have guys who are going to take advantage of that. And on top of that, they are a little bit more disciplined in not trying to force the ball into the post. And so I think that's going to be important come tournament time. But it does bear mentioning that if you're an opposing team, you can keep the ball out of Zach Edey's hands. You're just going to need to throw resources that direction. And I'm sure there will be a team in tournament time, whether it's in the first round or the second round or the Elite Eight or the Final Four, who says Zach Edey is not going to touch the ball. We're going to put 3 guys on him and let someone else beat us. And Purdue has guys who can beat you, but it's a question of those other guys doing it on the big stage.
Absolutely. And we'll look forward to that as we get closer and closer to that. I also talked about the Big 12 just being, to me, a juggernaut. I just think that they're so battle tested. Every night it's like these teams are playing each other, which everybody always says that, I know. But the Big 12 is just, there is truly no night off. I don't know that they have an Ohio State that's that bad that gives you a break, or in Michigan. But it's, man, their games are just fun to watch.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. And we saw that just the other night, like, it's recency bias that when you said who's the second best big man in the country, a lot of people would have immediately said Hunter Dickinson, right? But it's recency bias that I didn't say that, because Kansas is coming off a 30-point loss against Texas Tech, where Hunter Dickinson played terribly. And so, like, it's pretty funny that we said it just now, because Kansas has been very good the entire year, but they struggled. And Texas Tech is a very good team. I guess the closest thing that, looking at the standings, the closest thing that they have to a Michigan or to an Ohio State is Oklahoma State. And even they're not bad. I mean, the standings say they're 2-9 in Big 12 play, but they had some decent non-conference wins. Although they did lose to Notre Dame in non-conference, which is kind of a sign that your team this year is not very good, because Notre Dame is not particularly good this year, although they do play hard. And I do like what Micah Shrewsbury is doing there. But no, it is, again, as an AP voter, when I was going through and making my poll, I kind of look a lot at the Big 12 and like, okay, 8 of these teams deserve to be ranked. How am I and they've all beaten each other. How am I possibly going to put one in front of the other? And how am I going to fit 8 Big 12 teams into these rankings? Because they all deserve to be there based on their non-conference schedule and the way they played. So, yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if that league got 10 teams into the tournament, because that's every single one of those teams deserves to be there.
Yeah, I think that Purdue was fortunate to play as such a challenging non-conference schedule this year, more so than in the past, because the Big Ten is not as challenging as it should have been.
No.
And they're going to need that come March to see those different styles and all the differences. And they were successful against those different styles early on. So that is for Purdue fans, that is a positive to look forward to at the end of this season.
Yeah, absolutely. And Matt Painter said at the beginning of the year, like, that's why they scheduled the way they did. Is Matt Painter, what he likes to say is, you schedule for your team, right? If you have a team that's rebuilding that you feel like is not going to be at your best team, then you schedule a little bit weaker in the non-conference to kind of try to get them some confidence and help them get rolling. If you have a team that you feel is going to be really good, you schedule as hard as you possibly can, because you want to challenge that team, right? And so that's what he did this season. Is he thought his team was going to be pretty darn good, which I think everyone agreed. And so he challenged them in the non-conference, not only with these games in Maui and some of these against really good teams that are in the top 25, but also against teams. They played, I think, 4 or 5 teams that won mid-major conference championships last year. Not all of them made the NCAA tournament, but they all won their regular season in like mid-major tournaments. So even their bye games were the teams that they should beat pretty easily, or high-quality mid-major opponents. And so he challenged them that way by basically saying, we are not giving you a night off. Go show me that you deserve the hype that you have. And they did. They went out and basically beat all comers and played some really good games doing so. And I think that will help. And by the way, you're right, even in a practical sense, which is that I think that if Purdue had not played that kind of non-conference schedule, teams would be questioning whether they should be a number 1 seed. I think right now there's no question that they are a number 1 seed. It would take a pretty big drop off for them not to finish there. But if they had not played a difficult non-conference schedule, there would be people looking at the Big Ten and saying, why should Purdue be a number 1 seed? They haven't played anybody. And so it helped in that sense too, because they're going to get a higher seed as a result.
Absolutely. We've got more to talk about college basketball. We're hitting that part of the season. Dylan Sinn from the Fort Wayne Journal-Gazette with us right now. Back with more after this. Brought to you by our good friends from the Chop Shop Market and Table, where each and every Monday right now you can find Inside Indiana Men's Basketball with Don Fisher and some great food, including some great Wagyu steaks from the Voiles family Wagyu farm there. And in addition to their new salad bar and everything else they have there, and bakery, full bakery, butcher, get it all in there. Back with more right after this.
We'll be right back for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
If you're looking for a home, dun, 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 dun. What's new with you? What are you doing? Where are you going? What are you covering?
Yeah, that's I am at PFW tonight. It's right here in Fort Wayne as they try to get make a run in their late in their season.
Where I went through and I let them off this list, and I noticed this yesterday. I'm wondering where they are in the state among the other D1 schools in free throw shooting.
That's a good question. Where is PFW? They're fine. I don't think they're great. They have
I assumed that because I just didn't want to say it, but so that puts Indiana 11th out of 11 Division I schools in Indiana in free throw shooting.
Let's see. The PFW shoots 70% from the line exactly. I think IU is.
Then stop. Then stop talking already.
Yeah.
Indiana's not even close to that. They're more like 65%, I think. Yeah. Indiana is, the last I checked, which it's changed a little bit since then, but they were 326th out of 352 or whatever.
Well, Jim, did you see this? This isn't basketball related, but Nick Sheridan is going to be Alabama's offensive coordinator.
Oh, I'm glad you brought that back up. Thank you. Yes, I did. I sent that out yesterday. Not only that, Alabama's head coach, Alabama's offensive coordinator, Alabama's defensive coordinator, all former coaches from the same season at Indiana.
Yeah.
They
basically recreated that 2019 Indiana coaching staff, and just plopped it down at Alabama. Yeah.
But they minused out a big part of that.
Yeah.
I don't think Sheridan will be doing play calling, though. I wouldn't assume.
I think they gave him the coordinator title. I don't know if he'll be doing the play calling or not. I know that Ryan Grubb, who he replaced, was pretty involved in play calling. So
he was doing it, but he also went to the Seahawks as an offensive coordinator. So it was not like he.
I assume this is going to be one of those things where DeBoer is heavily involved in the game plan, but the game day play calling might go to Sheridan.
That's wild to think about.
Yeah.
Well, and there could have been, actually there is more with David Ballou, who is still the strength coach.
That's right.
Who was also on that same 9% APR financing for 36 months on a 2023 Honda Ridgeline. Go to AndyMooreHonda.com and get more to your door.
This segment is brought to you by Remax Advanced Realty, Indie Home Pros team by Cheryl Sizemore. Welcome back to Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Welcome back, Indiana Sports Beat Radio here on this Valentine's Day. It's a beautiful day outside. So there is that. Great day to go out and get your sweetie some flowers. Happy Valentine's Day, Kylie. I'm glad John in the break reminded me of something. Yesterday we saw in the world of college football. Kalen DeBoer, of course, as everybody knows, the former IU offensive coordinator, is the Alabama head coach now. He had already named Indiana's former defensive coordinator, Kane Womack, as Alabama's defensive coordinator. He brought Nick Sheridan with him, his tight ends coach at Washington, Indiana's former offensive coordinator. He did not bring William Inge, which I was a little surprised at, but as of right now, that has not happened. Ryan Grubb, who was expected to join him at Alabama after not getting the job at Washington, why they turned him down, I don't understand. But he ended up staying in Seattle. He's now the offensive coordinator for the Seahawks. But now Nick Sheridan has been elevated to the offensive coordinator's position at Alabama. So the top three spots at Alabama, the head coach, both coordinators, formerly on Indiana's staff at the same time in 2019. And that does not count David Ballou, the strength and conditioning coach, who had already left for Alabama before the rest of them. Dr. Ray, who went with him, is in his second season with the Saints in that position. So there's the staff that you had at Indiana. But as I always say, you have to have the right people in the right positions. And that goes with anything, any sport, any coaching staff, lineup, whatever. You've got to have the right people in the right places. And so it's Indiana has had so many opportunities in different sports to not be in the position they're in, whether that has been football or basketball, but they just never seem to get it right. And I'm trying to be gentle because this goes back further than anything current. So I'm not even talking about anybody current, but too many people have been hired by Indiana and put in a position to do things and make decisions that had no experience in that position making those decisions. And therefore, guess what you get? Big time mistakes that are very, very costly. And I mean money costly. And we've seen that whether it's been basketball or football.
I mean, the thing is that the 2019 and 2020 seasons were so good for IU football that, like, people at the time, fans were clamoring, hey, we need to invest in football. And so they decided the way to do that was to give Tom Allen an extension, because you remember Tom Allen was rumored to be leaving Indiana for every coaching job.
That's my point right there. Who thought that?
Yeah. Well,
I didn't. That's not. I agree with they needed to invest in football, but that's where our agreement stops.
Yeah, I do think that there is a little bit of, and maybe not for you, maybe you called it. I do think there is some Monday morning quarterbacking for a lot of people, which is that, like, oh, there was no world after 2020 in which, with the best season IU football has had in 50 years, they weren't going to extend Tom Allen and make him the coach for a long time. Now, the buyout was such that it probably didn't have to be as high as it was, but they did that because they didn't want to spend the money to make him the third highest paid coach in the Big Ten, which is probably what he would have deserved at that time, right? Like, he was coming off of 2 seasons that were as good as Indiana had in so long that I do think he was going to get his money. There was no way around that. Now, how much of that success was because of guys underneath him? It turns out a lot. But at the time, it was really hard to see that. Kalen DeBoer was not Kalen DeBoer at the time, right?
See,
he was just some guy they hired from Fresno State, you know?
No, I disagree, because he came in with a resume that was nothing but winning, and he did just that. To me, there were way too many things that were painfully obvious in decision making that were, I'm like, why are you at this point? Why are you not doing that? Why do you not have the hands team on the field in the Gator Bowl when the only thing likely is an onside kick? There were so many of those things throughout that whole period. You're like, what are we doing? What are you doing? Yeah, that's where, but it's not just that. Like I said, it's not just that. There are other, we can talk basketball and have this same conversation. And you go above them, but you go above even the ADs. People put certain people in position that did not have the experience of that position, that did not have any experience hiring coaches at multi-million-dollar salaries. Zero experience whatsoever at that. Who the hell gets a job with that kind of responsibility with zero experience at that? Only Indiana, baby.
Well, it's funny that you say that, because we've talked before about how I've been a Michigan fan most of my life. Michigan did the exact same thing in the early 2010s. They hired Dave Brandon, who was at the time the CEO of Domino's. They hired him to be the athletic director, and it didn't work.
Domino's was a big supporter of Michigan, I believe.
Yes, yeah, it was. It was a very weird.
Funny how that works that way, isn't it? How did that work out?
One of the worst hires for an athletic director, basically in the entire 21st century. It was awful. He hired Brady Hoke, and at the time, it was like, oh, Brady Hoke went 11-2 his first year, but things fell apart so badly with that tenure that people were protesting outside of Dave Brandon's house. Like, students were protesting, saying, "Hey, this guy has to go." In 2014, like it was so bad. So no, I do know a little something about it's not just Indiana that makes these hires. Maybe it was an early 2010s thing, because that was right around the time that Fred Glass came in. But no,
Indiana's just perfected it.
It's just I think of. I use any excuse to bring up the fact that did indeed happen at Michigan, that they hired the CEO of Domino's to be their athletic director. I know he played football for Michigan. He played for Bo. I get it. But he was the CEO of Domino's, man.
Making pizzas is not the same as hiring coaches and all these. It's one has nothing to do with the other. Yeah. And it amazes me, these decisions that get made. And there's a board of directors that does this.
Yeah.
So it's a president. You have a president. That's been a huge. It actually starts there for Indiana, I think, has some of these presidents that they've had either zero to no sports knowledge, and cared about as much about that. I mean, you could go all the way back to when Indiana fired Bob Knight. I'm not saying that it was or was not time for him to go. That's not even my argument. My argument is, if you're going to take down a king, you better have a plan. If you're going to take down a king, you better have a complete and full understanding of the ramifications of taking that king down. If you're going to take down a king, you better have a succession plan in place, ready to go, so you are prepared for all the fallout that will come around it. Indiana did none of that. And not only do they not do that, they would follow that up by another AD of forcing the hire of a coach that was on NCAA sanctions, who would turn around and do the same damn thing again. Although he is probably the best coach Indiana has hired since Bob Knight. It doesn't matter. It's a hire that shouldn't have been made simply because of the facts of the time. No, it's just the decisions. You can just look back and see this. It just lays itself out.
It really is funny to like. I just look at this every once in a while, and I think Indiana had one of the best coaches in the country. Top 5 coach in the country currently on their roster, on their staff, just sitting there, and it was. Kelvin Sampson is one of the best coaches in the country currently. There's just no way around that. That what he's done at Houston is outstanding. They're good and very good every single year. And the fact is, when he was at IU and they hired him, and by the time and then he was there and he left, he was just incapable of following the rules. He was just constitutionally incapable of following the rules in a way that he needed to. And it's the biggest what if ever to me, because he's such a great coach, and he would have had those guys rolling for years. He couldn't follow the rules to save his life. He couldn't do it at Oklahoma. He couldn't do it at Indiana. He went away, did some soul searching, and he seems to be relatively on the right path at Houston in terms of, like, he hasn't been knocked by the NCAA, and he's been there for a decade now. So it's kind of wild to think that Indiana had this guy, and he just couldn't. He was constitutionally incapable of doing what needed to be done as Indiana's basketball coach at the time, because he was such a great coach in terms of everything except following the rules, which is it's nuts to me to think about.
Yeah, it just and he gets as much blame as anybody. If not,
absolutely.
I mean, well, him and Adam Herbert. If you're going to bring that guy in, and okay, you're skating on thin ice there, but that's okay. Sometimes you have to take a chance. And I get that. And it was a good chance as far as him being a very good coach. But at the same time, you better have somebody morning, noon, and night making sure he doesn't do the things that he did to get himself and that school in Oklahoma in trouble prior to coming to Indiana. And they did not do that. And I blame that on Adam Herbert. If it hadn't have been Kelvin Sampson, then I wonder who it would have been.
I was not around at the time. You probably remember better than I do. Who were even the other?
I can't remember.
Considering hiring in 2005.
I can't remember. I would have to look that up.
Who else was in contention? Because Sampson had a great resume at the time. I mean, he'd taken Oklahoma to the Final Four. He'd been there forever.
Who did he lose to in the Final Four, as a matter of fact?
That's great.
He lost to Indiana, ironically.
Funny way to hire a coach, by the way. Hey, we remember you.
Lost to the guy that you're replacing.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the irony.
It really
the irony.
Also, have you seen what Mike Davis is doing up at Detroit Mercy this year? Have you checked on this at all?
Is he like 0-100 or something?
They are 0-26 this year, man. How is that even possible? How do you not just randomly win a game that you shouldn't?
Yeah, how can there not be one team on your schedule that just doesn't suck? Especially playing the level of talent that they play. It's not like they're playing the Big East. It's not like they're playing in one of these tough conferences. They're not. But he did lose his son, who was the all-time, that he let just run roughshod and score 1,000 points a game. He doesn't have him anymore.
No. His son came up 3 points short of setting the all-time scoring record in the NCAA, 3 points short of Pete Maravich. But
in 5 years.
In 5 years, yes. Pete did it in 3, no 3-point line, et cetera, and so forth. But no, I mean, they went 14-19, I think, last year, if I remember correctly. The fact that they went from that to 0-26, 14-19 is not good, but it's not this. How did this happen?
But if you're only going 14-19 with a guy who is leading the country in scoring, that tells you bad things to come.
Right. And to be clear, Detroit Mercy is a really hard place to win. They have issues with money. They don't have any. It is part
Mickey
of it.
V couldn't win there, baby.
Hey, yeah. But
what's coming up next for you, man?
I'm actually, speaking of Detroit Mercy, I cover Purdue Fort Wayne, who's in their conference in the Horizon League. I'm covering them tonight. They are home against Oakland, who is second place in the league, so that should be a really fun game. And then tomorrow I will be in West Lafayette for Purdue, Minnesota, as Purdue tries to extend its win streak to 9 games. Minnesota's a little bit feisty this year, so it should be a fun one as well. So I will be doing that, and then I will be taking the weekend off to go to my bachelor party. So very excited.
Congratulations, first of all. Again, I didn't even know, so good job with keeping that under wraps.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
But it's out now, baby. When is the big date?
April 20th. So and it's in South Bend, which is the exact same day as the Notre Dame football spring game. So we will be
smart thinking.
That's right. It is. That's right. So we were able to get the church because no one else wanted to get married that day. So anyone who's coming in town for the spring game, you are welcome. Come by. See us.
Is it at the same time?
It is exactly the kickoff of the spring game and the start of my wedding are at exactly the same time, 1 p.m.
So clearly you had no involvement in the planning.
No. This is the thing, is that we wanted to get married in the Basilica in South Bend, which is a very popular place to get married, as you can imagine. And the only date we needed to do it in April because that's when our schedules worked out. And the only date they had available in April was that day, because that was, I know everyone else was like, hey, it's game day. We're not going to do it that day. And my fiance and I were like, hey, that day works for us. We'll take it. So it'll be the first time in 6 years that I will not be covering spring game. So
that will be easy to remember. Congratulations again, sir. Look forward to seeing you next week, though.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Looking forward to it, Jim.
Dylan Sinn, the Fort Wayne Journal-Gazette, here on Indiana Sports Beat Radio, brought to you by our good friend Cheryl Sizemore. For those in the market for a home in the Indianapolis area, you need Cheryl, and her 2 decades of experience could be the difference between getting the home you want or not. Reach out to her, Cheryl at IndyHomePros.com. Back with more Indiana Sports Beat Radio right after this.
We'll be right back for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
In the market.
Didn't mean to prematurely kick you out there, Dylan, if you had anything else to say.
Nope, no problem at all. I just wanted to say thanks for having me on. I'll see you guys later, all right?
See ya.
Oh, man. Indiana Hoosiers sent out a happy Valentine's card with showing a football player catching a heart. It says great catch.
Aww.
Oh, bye. Yeah, that's funny. That's funny. All right. Have a great day, brother.
All right, I'll talk to you guys later.
All right, Kyle said he'll be on in a few minutes.
Oladipo waved.
Why do you keep on? Why do you keep saying his name Oladipo? You said that the other day when you were talking about him. Were you saying that like jokingly? Because you said it a lot.
I don't know what's the correct pronunciation.
It's Oladipo. Did you what do you mean you didn't know the correct pronunciation?
I don't know that for a fact.
Something different?
Yeah, I hear a different.
I mean, every announcer I've ever heard say his name I've never heard anybody say Oladipo.
Well, I like to be different. Sometimes I purposely get on these things unconsciously, purposely.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's one of them.
Maybe.
What's that?
I'm just reading some comments.
Oh, what am I missing?
Someone said diaper-o. It's kind of what Oladipo sounds like.
Diaper boy. No, I didn't mean that, but
all right. Again, Kyle will be joining us shortly. Needs. So there couldn't be a better time to go and pull him in before I pull us all the way back in. Good morning, Kyle.
Morning.
All right, here we go, guys. Gorgeous Stonecrest Signature Series house plans. We have several lots available with scenic views of the golf course. Contact Amy Rhoda with Revesco Real Estate for additional information. 812-583-0919 or go to mystonecrestliving.com. That's mystonecrestliving.com for more details. This segment is brought to you by Reynolds Family Dentistry in Sellersburg. Welcome back to Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
welcome back, Indiana Sports Beat Radio on this Valentine's Day, and we continue to sweeten up your day. Kyle Neddenriep bringing chocolates and flowers. You look like you're already out working somewhere.
I'm ready to go. I'm Valentine's Day, man. I'm always ready.
Both of us with our beautiful red on. Just kidding. I'm wearing
exactly.
I don't even know, with his turquoise and he's in black and blue. A couple of things that immediately just jump off the page to talk about. Number one, Fisher's routing Lawrence North. And then, of course, the potential, the talk of seeding in football. So I guess let's talk about the seeding in football, because this is not across the board, and this is just a starting point, more or less, right?
Yeah, it's a it's not even yet a proposal. Although I did hear, I've heard some things as far as even in the last day or so about them getting to the 70% total on that. Basically, so they put out, just to kind of go back, the IFCA put out 2 questions to its membership asking, one was, would you support looking at seeding? Basically across the board, just look at seeding. What would you think about it? The second question was, what would you think about a 2-year pilot program, basically kind of like a trial run, basically for 2 years in 6A only. And the looking at seeding, I've heard was and Bob Gaddis, actually the IFCA executive director, told me the other day, on the record and everything, that they're over 70% on that first question. They were slightly under 70 on the second question, but I've heard through the grapevine they've got to that 70% now. So basically that will now go to, they're going to discuss it at their state meeting, which is, I believe, March 8th, 7th or 8th, somewhere in there, whatever that Friday is, and talk about it more. And then most likely we'll then present it to the Athletic Directors Association, and then from there it could become a proposal to the IHSA, which they have their meeting in late April. I think April 27th or somewhere, whatever that that last week April is roughly. So at that point it could become something that they do for 2 years. I have my doubts based on past history of seeding and how people seem to feel about it, but I do think there's some momentum even within the IHSAA to take a look at this. And honestly, I think what the IFCA really wants is like, hey, if we have the numbers, why aren't we doing it? That sort of thing. So in the IFCA, to their credit, they've had several proposals in the last, I think Bob Gaddis said this is the 4th time since he's been on the board. And there was one I covered pretty extensively 6 years ago that, it was a little bit different of a setup, and it included everybody. It was all 6 classes, and they were going to basically seed the top 2 teams in each sectional. And that one didn't get – it had enough support, and then it kind of got stalled out, and then it didn't have enough support. There was just too many additions. Like they were trying to, do neutral site, regional game, that sort of thing. And then it became sort of like, it was just too much, became a little bit unwieldy. And so this time they're just trying to focus in on, all right, let's see if we can do 6A. We have support. I think honestly, the support from the 6A coaches is like 80% to do this. So it's very high. So I love the idea. Honestly, I was kind of proposing this before, like for 5A and 6A was my opinion, but I especially 6A, because it's so dominant in central Indiana. You have more than half, I think about 2/3 of the schools are from our area here in the Indianapolis area. So, and if you're dividing, and the idea here would be to divide north and south 1 through 16. So you're not having Crown Point travel to Jeffersonville. You're just having Crown Point possibly travel to, Westfield. So you're kind of splitting the state in half. And honestly, Jeffersonville, they're already in a sectional with Center Grove and Franklin Central. So, you're already having that travel situation. So, yeah, so that's pretty much where that stands. It's interesting idea. And, I think it has some legs right now. It has some momentum because it just has some momentum, I think. And I think it has momentum from some different areas that maybe it didn't before. So, we'll see. I guess the big question is, if you seed in football, do you have to seed other sports? I've asked that to Paul Knighting, and he said no. But it does open that door, and I know volleyball and baseball are probably going to have proposals also for seeding. So that may come into factor too.
I noticed you did not say basketball.
I don't sense basketball has anything right now as far as that goes. So maybe And I don't necessarily disagree. I don't, I think if you're to do anything in basketball, maybe you see the top two, but I'm not really strongly supporting that, in my opinion.
Why not the top two in basketball? I get the bottom two because of the size, all the small schools and whatnot. But why not the top two, especially the 4A class in basketball? It's very similar to 6A in football.
Yeah, I wouldn't be against it, especially especially now. I'm for anything that makes the tournament better. And in my opinion, I think the excuses of, well, they're just going to play each other anyway. I mean, it's like, well, why not make it better though? So you have better championship games. I don't get that. I don't get that idea.
It makes zero sense to me. I agree with you 1,000%. And especially in basketball, that has been such a fabric of the state where in today's day and age, there has been drop-offs in fan, the attendance in some places because you get these crazy games that is like, really? Where first round game of course, I have to go back a couple years to make this example. It's just one that quickly comes to mind, though. But back when New Albany, Floyd Central, and Jeffersonville were all ranked in the top 6, and all were in the same damn sectional, that's not what you want to see.
No, and right now you have this year, and this has kind of become it's not a one-off year, but you have Fishers, Noblesville, and Westfield are all in the top 3. So it's like you're going to have almost by default, you're going to have, some crazy game in the first, at least in the first 2 nights for sure. And, so that sectional 8 at Noblesville is nuts, but yeah, I wouldn't be against it. I don't know how much basketball it really changes because I love sectional week in basketball. I'm kind of speaking out of both sides a little bit because I do love sectional week. I love the rivalries, all that. I do think with one minor tweak though, you can sort of make it better by and you can still build in your blind draw show, unveil those top 2, and then you blind draw the rest, and it's like, and then you've kind of played for something. You played for getting one of those top 2 seeds and maybe getting a little bit more advantageous draw, and it makes the season more interesting. Right now, especially in football, it's just, it's like, man, what are we, these games are great, but it's like, there's no real bearing on anything beyond the season. And the games are still great. I'm not saying stuff's broken. It's not, but I think there's a way to make it a little bit better. And believe me, I've done this a long time. I've heard all the reasons why we shouldn't do it. And I definitely keep my ears open to that and understand. But that, I think the more we go along, it's just like these arguments against it just don't hold much water to me. I just don't get some of the excuses not to do it. I just think it's somewhat lazy, to be honest with you. It's like if we're the only state that doesn't have seating in football. I mean, that's not a badge of honor, in my opinion. That's like, what are we doing here? So I don't know. I mean, I try not to, I basically haven't even talked about this for about 5 years because I didn't think it was even possible. But now that it seems like it is, I'm definitely in support of doing something.
Absolutely, I agree. And this all comes on the heels of the 2-year alignment that comes out, enrollment. And Logansport needed to expel about 15 kids, it looks like.
Yeah, and those numbers are still, the numbers I actually put out the other day, there's been some changes, not necessarily, I'm not talking about Logansport, but there have been some changes to that. So, people might want to check that out and see, because some of those numbers just, whatever changed with the Department of Education. So there have been some revisions to that. And honestly, I wouldn't read too much into it just yet because they haven't put out the classifications. That will come in a couple weeks. And then what's of real importance to the bigger schools, especially the bigger schools, obviously they don't care about the class designations because they know they're going to be the 4A in basketball, softball, baseball, whatever. But then the sectional alignments will be in late April. So there's a lot of things coming here in a couple months that, and this will change, I will say, like, and maybe makes seating in basketball even more intriguing is you're going to have a lot of 5-team mostly 5-team sectionals in 4A, because you're going to have roughly 81 teams, I think, probably in 4A. So, you're talking 16 sectionals, 81 teams. I think Evansville will still have 4 teams just based on the geography of it. I'm just guessing, but looking at it, Bedford's the only school, and that's not even close to Evansville, really. So, I would think that one would be a 4-teamer, so you'd probably have a 6-teamer somewhere, and then a whole bunch of 5-team sectionals. So that's a real disadvantage, if you're getting the first round game in a 5-team sectional, and then the other 3 are all getting buys into the semifinal round. So, that would be another reason maybe to look at doing a, seeding the top 2. So I don't think that'll happen anytime soon, but maybe in the future. But it does changes the alignment a little bit, and going to this 20%, 4A 25 and 3A 25 and 2A and 30 and 1A is a little bit obviously different than what they've done in the past, which is basically split the classes all evenly, across the board. So that will change some things. Maybe it won't change as much as it was originally intended to do, because I know there was a proposal to add a 5th class and then make basically what would be 5As more of like a super class of the real big schools. And that would have created, would have eliminated somewhat that big enrollment gap in the biggest class. So they've sort of done that, but maybe probably not to the extent that I think a lot of people were hoping for.
Yeah, and I don't know what stops them from doing that.
From making it a bit super class, you mean?
Yeah. Is there a reasoning that's behind it?
Well, I think it's just maybe too much at once. Now, the one thing I have talked to Paul Neidig about is that they could change that percentage and make it smaller. Say it's and that's sort of why they did percentages instead of a strict enrollment cutoff, because one of the plans was to make it, I can't remember the exact 1,400 students and up, for instance, would be 4A. Instead, they went to 20% to try to make it to where if they needed to change that percentage, they could do that and maybe make it 15% or whatever. So but yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's you don't want to probably get below, I think you could make it where honestly what I would do is make it 64 teams in 4A, and that way you have 4-team brackets all across the board, and it makes it sort of a more strict number. But again, easier said than done. I don't know what all goes into those decisions exactly, but yeah, I don't know for sure why. It's just I guess maybe start a little bit lower on that scale, and then maybe you can work your way larger, because all these schools, honestly, Jim, are getting, these suburban schools in Indianapolis are just getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and the gap between them and the smaller 4As is continuing to increase.
Yeah, and we see that. And then this week, as I mentioned, you saw a team that has been considered, as one of the best, but they still are. But Lawrence North, considered number 1 by some throughout the year, but they just got bamboozled by Fishers, who is now a clearer and number 1 team, it looks like.
Yeah, who was voting Lawrence North number 1? I don't know who that moron. Yeah, I was. I guess I was wrong. I would have to admit that game last night.
And I was not suggesting that. I wasn't even talking about that.
Well, I'm bringing that to attention because it's been brought to my attention. But I still believe Lawrence North has the capability. Right now, there's something going on that. They got to get corrected, and give credit to Fishers, man. And Chris Giffen, the LN coach, did last night. He said, man, I don't know that we even played that bad. They definitely could have played better defense. But man, they got run. And Fishers made 14 threes. Freshman Cooper Zachary had 6 of them. Taden Metzger had 4. And they were just running and gunning. It was very impressive. Lawrence North's got to get some. They just have to play better defensively. I think offensively, there were times they looked pretty good last night, and times they looked like they were forcing it, or, I don't know. Just they've got to get Brandon Miller more involved too, who's a sophomore, really good player inside for me. He only had a couple points last night, so It's interesting, and kind of like Garrett Weininger said last night from Fisher, it's like, it was great. Hopefully our guys know they can beat anybody, but man, it doesn't matter because they're going to get down to the sectional, and you can lose on one night, so you can be out pretty quickly.
Absolutely. Kyle Neddenriep, make sure you're giving him a follow at the Indy Star, keeping up with all that is going on in Indiana high school athletics. He's got it all, the busiest working man in show business, at least in sports in this state, that's for sure. Appreciate you, my friend.
You bet. Thanks, Jim.
You bet. Kyle Neddenriep from Indy Star joining us. Up next, the captain, Rick Bozich, joins us from WDRB.com. Back with that and more, brought to you by our friends at Reynolds Family Dentistry down in Sellersburg. You need to keep that championship smile. Go see Dr. J. Back with that and after this.
We'll be right back for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Formerly.
Good morning, Rick.
Good day, sir. I see you also are wearing your Valentine's Day best.
Oh, my blue warm-up?
Yes, mine's. Yeah, I'm wearing the same.
You want me to go change into red?
No, I'm kidding. Look at me. I'm wearing the same as you are.
I see. You got a red hat on, though.
It's orange.
That's actually orange. Yeah, it's orange. Orange.
What's new, guys?
Oh, just living the dream. The heart of college basketball season. I don't know what did Dockage know. I did see him put out because I responded to it, a tweet yesterday. Someone asked him about what he thought about Indiana State being ranked, and he said they're going to get their butt kicked tonight. And they were a 17.5-point favorite, and man, he was dead on. They got ran out of the gym.
Well, his son is an assistant coach at Illinois State, so that's why I'm sure he did that.
I did not know that.
Yeah. Andrew is an assistant coach at Illinois State.
I did not know that.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So that's what he was talking about.
Well,
I saw Louisville almost got another win for a while. They were up at half last night, but kind of, lost it.
They didn't play any defense in the second half and gave up 50 points, and they kind of got bullied by an older, stronger team. Not good. A bunch of teams, or the couple, Virginia got beat. 23-game home winning streak ended last night.
Daggone.
Oh, North Carolina went down.
North Carolina went down to the mighty Syracuse. Michigan
The
lost
Orange.
by 300. How much? Illinois beat them by like 30 or 40, right?
Where was that damn score? Yep, 97-68.
Pretty bad.
31. It's like Kansas has got to be the biggest Jekyll and Hyde team of this season.
Yeah, they're not that good this year, really. Indiana should have beat them. But
Kentucky, they beat Chris Beard and Ole Miss at home in Lexington.
All right, here we go, guys.
They got a tough game Saturday at Auburn.
2023 and 2024 Honda Pilots, HRVs, CRVs, Honda Ridgelines, payment-free for 90 days. Or get 0.9% APR financing for 36 months on a 2023 Honda Ridgeline. Go to AndyMooreHonda.com and get more to your door.
This segment is brought to you by Bubba's 33 in Clarksville and Evansville. Pizza, burgers, beer. Welcome back to Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Welcome back, Indiana Sports Beat Radio on this Wednesday. We'll continue on with the Valentine's Day special. Our next sweetie is Captain Rick Bozich from WDRB.com. How are you, sir?
I'm good, man. It's pitchers and catchers report day too, buddy. Let's keep our priorities in order.
That's right. I forgot. I mentioned earlier, Indiana, they opened their season And for college baseball this weekend, and those games will be on ESPN Plus, is they actually have the second game of the college baseball season with Duke. And I can't remember if that's an 11 a.m. game. Yeah.
And Duke's ranked too. Duke's a top 20 team.
So
that's in Myrtle Beach, I believe.
Which is Duke is probably that line is about as high as it goes north on that East Coast of teams that are good. Because if you look, everybody, the great teams, of course, are in the Southeast, especially the Southeastern Conference, but also any warm weather state. North Carolina is on that Mendoza line of there's not many teams north of them that are usually that good. Are there?
Not consistent. Virginia is usually good. Virginia's been good. They won a national championship a few years ago. So yeah, I mean Louisville's been good until the last couple of years. They've been good consistently. They've gone to 5 College World Series.
Oh
yeah. Those would be the ones. But yeah, it's this weekend, Friday, and Indiana and I know in Louisville both playing home games next week, right?
Yeah. Let's just hope. Let's hope that the weather stays like it is right now. If it is, it's doable. You're like, okay, I can handle that.
Yeah.
56 for a high today. So in February, yeah, I'm taking that every day and twice on Sunday.
Yeah.
So hope it stays like that. How about your White Sox? What are the expectations this year? Things that didn't go well last year.
Well, I'll put it to you this way. Baseball Prospectus does statistical forecast of the playoff chances of all the teams in Major League Baseball. And there were 3 teams that were given a 0.00 chance of making the postseason.
Oh, man.
The Washington Nationals, the Oakland A's, and the White Sox. So I think that's all I have to say.
If you're ever on a list with the Oakland A's, you know it's not probably a good list.
But that's okay. I still watch. That's when you find out.
Hey, everybody does.
If you're really a fan, it's easy to be a fan when a team's going well.
What about the Reds and the Cardinals? The Cardinals, of course, coming off of a horrible year. And I mention that only because A, I'm not a Cardinals fan. I'm a Reds fan. But B, because we don't see that. The Cardinals are just one of those professional organizations that does not finish last. And it wasn't close last year.
Yeah, I think the NL Central is going to be a fun race. The Reds are on the way up with all those good young players. They've added a few pieces. I think they still need to add a little bit more pitching. The Cardinals, they've added some pitchers. They're all veteran pitchers who really are on the downside of their career. I'm not really sure they've fixed their team. The Cubs got better last year and have a lot of good young players, and the Brewers just traded away their best pitcher, so I would doubt they're going to repeat. So that division's wide open. So I would probably pick the Reds or the Cubs to win that division.
Wow, that I look forward to a fun season of watching that. But right now we are in the midst of the heating part.
Yeah, we put off talking about college basketball as long as we can, huh?
Yeah, that's it. That's all we can go. Last night, like I said, some great games. Marquette goes to Butler as a 4.5 point favorite, and they win that game by 6. That's Butler's having a really good season. They're going to make the tournament, I think. I don't know. They're going to be on the bubble. Do you think that they're in?
I don't think they're in right now, but I think they're not totally out of it, like some other teams that we know. They still have a chance to sort of put themselves in the discussion with a claw. I haven't checked their schedule, but if they can close strong and go to New York and have a good showing in the Big East tournament, they got a chance. But Indiana State's probably going to be in the tournament. That loss last night hurts them. The Valley doesn't always get 2 teams, but their computer rankings to this point are good enough that they're probably going to get in anyway. And Purdue's going to be a number 1 seed. And other than that, for the state of Indiana, I'm not sure there's anything else to talk about.
I mentioned that earlier. I go shockingly out of, I believe, 11 Division I teams, probably just looking at 2 getting in this year. And that is Indiana State and Purdue. and that's sad for the state, but obviously for Notre Dame, Micah Shrewsbury in his first season of the changeover there. Indiana, that's a different conversation. There are two sides of that discussion for the fans. One says, oh, it's only the third year, yada, yada. And I'm like, there is no such thing as only the third year anymore. That conversation is gone. That's even gone for football. If even in football, you better be on your way up in your third year because of the portal and NIL. Those are two tools, and there could not have been two things added that I would have thought to help Indiana get back and stay at the level they should be at, that NIL and the transfer portal, but hasn't quite worked out that way.
You know, what I would say is this. You can have a step back, but you shouldn't have a step back to this degree. You shouldn't be in a situation where you're out of the NCAA tournament discussion. You know, they've been out of it now for a month in January. They got no quality non-conference wins. They've been blown out how many times? 4 or 5? Twice by Purdue, once by UConn, once by Auburn. I would even throw Penn State blowing them out in Bloomington. You shouldn't be losing big like that. And you don't really see what the plan is at this point. And, you know, you should not be in a situation where you're not even in consideration to make the tournament, you know, halfway through the Big Ten season. You shouldn't be.
Well, Mike, I think I saw a stat the other day. Mike Woodson has more 15-point losses in
2.5 years,
or is 2.5 seasons than Archie did in 4, and that's saying something right there. Than Crean did in his last 7, and even Mike Davis was in that. Than Davis did. So there's 2 names in there that are not exactly considered great coaches. So, but they were able to withstand the same battles that Mike Woodson is going through without the options of having the portal or the NIL.
I mean, Northwestern went into Purdue and played them tough, right?
Yeah, they almost beat them.
Yeah. I mean, Illinois went in there
overtime,
and played them tough. You know, Purdue's good, but that's a rivalry game. You shouldn't go in there and get punked and only score 59 points. You shouldn't lose 2 games against your rival by over 20 points. That's the kind of stuff that makes people question, you know, what's going on. That shouldn't happen. Even when Crean was the coach, they didn't get, you know, some of his Verdell Jones teams early on and Tom Pritchard and those guys, they played Purdue tougher than that. And Purdue was pretty good back then. I believe that's when they had Hummel and Etuan Moore and Juwan Johnson and Martin. I forgot his first name. The other guy was in that one class. They played them tougher than that. So that's just not a good sign for what's going on in Bloomington right now.
No, not at all. I'm trying to quickly look up the very first year of Tom Crean, which was they were 6-25. They lost 67-81 at Purdue.
Okay.
I mean, that's Crean's first season. What do you have? 2 scholarship players when he started that season?
He had no returning scholarship guys, I don't think, except for Kyle Tabor, right?
Right.
Wasn't that the Verdell Jones? Pretty sure it was Verdell Jones.
Did they come in that year or the next year?
Dumas, Malik Story, Tom Pritchard, Nick Williams. Yeah, 81-67 is what they lost by. And the next year when they had Hulls and Watford and all those guys who were freshmen, let's see what the scores were. 78-75. They only lost by 3 points at home, and at Purdue they lost by 19. So close, but still, I mean, at home they only lost by 3.
Pride. The difference was pride.
Yeah.
Well, pride and college coaching, I will say. That has a plan, had a plan.
It's competitiveness. And, you know, I don't know. It just doesn't seem to be there. I mean, you shouldn't get. I hate to repeat myself, but you shouldn't get blown out that many times in 1 year. It shouldn't happen. I mean, it's not like Indiana doesn't have any talent. They got a 5-star. They got a guy who's one of the better guys who came out of the portal, who's probably going to get picked in the NBA draft. They got Malik Renew, who's one of the 15 best players in the Big Ten. They don't have any guards. That's the problem. Their guard play is among the worst in the Big Ten, and they don't have any consistency. I don't know. It's just not working, man.
And
I think a lot of fans, my sense of it all now is that a lot of fans have moved past anger to they're like at resignation. They're like they've detached from the team. It's like they're not watching, they're not expecting anything. They don't see what the path forward is to a better, more competitive situation.
You want to hear something more shocking? They're actually waiting for football season.
Yeah, no, they are. I agree. They're waiting for Kurt Cignetti. They're happy that are they going to get a new playing surface in the Mellencamp Pavilion? They're happier about that than they are anything that's going on with basketball. And then when you throw out the fact that some of these guys on the basketball team are getting paid, they're even more bewildered.
Oh no, getting paid.
I know.
Let me put the correct emphasis on getting paid.
Right.
Big time.
You can look around, Nebraska and Northwestern and some of these other teams have moved ahead of IU in the Big Ten, are going to finish ahead of them in the standings, and that shouldn't happen.
No, and something that a question that I bring up, I ask people a lot. I was like, I have personally I don't recall a coach coming into a situation like we had with Woodson coming into this one. You're coming into a program that has been losing, that had your predecessor was not what it needed to be, but yet he kept that staff. He kept everything the same. The recruits that were being recruited, nothing changed. He didn't know to change anything. He don't know what he should change. He's just gonna, I guess, come in and just, I'm not exactly sure what the thinking was, but there was no change by him, at least from a personnel standpoint. Ostrom left, but that's because I don't think he was really even a coach. I think he was more of just a yes guy. But the rest of the staff stayed intact. I've never seen that.
You mean the sports staff?
Yes, assistant coaches. Assistant coaches.
Well, I thought the only one he kept was Kenya. Walsh was there too. Yeah, Walsh
was there.
Different job.
And Fife gets booted, and so they bring in the one guy, but pretty much everything has stayed intact. The recruits, it was the same recruits, minus going out in the next year and getting Jalen Hood-Schifino, but there was just virtually no change, and there has been no change since. So I don't know what change people are expecting there to be. I'm not sure that they know what changes to make.
Yeah, I mean, to me, one of the biggest disconnects when you listen to Mike Woodson talk, I'm not really sure he grasps some of the differences between college basketball and the NBA. I know that he downplays some of the analytics things, and in the NBA, it all goes by what place you are in the standings, and that determines whether you're in the postseason. It's not that way in college basketball. You've got to have a good computer ranking, and Indiana's computer ranking has been horrible all year. And then he made the comment the other night that they have to go out and add a couple pieces. I mean, there's no waiver wire. There's no trading deadline in college basketball. You can't add any pieces until after the season. And maybe that's what indeed he meant. But, and the time for adding, I guess the transfer portal is the main thing, but usually the time for adding pieces is in the fall when you're recruiting guys, and they added one piece. And it really isn't the piece that they need. The piece that they need are some really good guards. and they went after really one guy hard and put all their eggs in his basket, and they didn't get him. And that creates a problem now where they have to hit and hit big in the transfer portal. So there's some flashing lights out there. Like, I'm not sure he really understands the challenge that he's facing and how to solve it. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And you have to ask, was being given a $1 million raise the smart thing to do, not from a financial standpoint, but did that tell him, oh, you're doing all that we need you to do? You're doing what we need done. Somebody gives me $1 million raise. That says, hey, you're killing it. And not sure that's the case. We got to take a break.
It was an overreaction to, the fact that they made the tournament in back-to-back years, where if you really want to step away from it historically and look at it, you say, yeah, they made the tournament in back-to-back years, but both years they got in the tournament, they got blown off the floor in their last game and didn't even make the Sweet 16. That really isn't what Indiana basketball should aspire to.
St. Peter's has had more success in the tournament.
We can go a long way, but you need to take a break.
Back with more Captain Rick Bozich right after this.
We'll be right back for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Man, you guys are WDRB is probably, are they the number one? You guys have to be the number one sports in Louisville now, right?
Yep.
And that is so weird because I remember I was always into media before I was in media, whether it was reading the paper, reading you in the paper growing up, but WDRB was, I remember when they were basically a cartoon channel. I'm serious. Would come home from school and watch cartoons. When they first came on, what was Ray Fouché?
Ray Fouché, yeah. He unfortunately passed away last year.
Did he? Didn't he start out as a writer at the Courier?
Yeah, he was Louisville Times. He was like a trivia writer and a TV writer, yeah.
Yes, that's right.
Yep.
That's crazy.
Yep. Yes, sir.
I'm gonna wait to come back and ask this, but I'm gonna ask. Very few stations, Indianapolis stations, have tried it to bring on guys like you and Eric Crawford,
right,
who are great writers, and move that into their sports department. And it hasn't worked in most places, but it has worked extraordinarily well there.
Right.
As a matter of fact, it's the best part of their sports department. Well, I don't mean that as a diss to Tom or is our buddy Mr. Lewis left. He's gone again, right?
Tyler Griever is our new guy. He's good.
Where's our buddy Lewis? Is he working at a regular job now?
Baptist East.
That's right. Yeah. He got him an 8 to 5 or a 9 to 5 man.
So IU has Northwestern at home on Sunday and Nebraska on Wednesday, huh?
They keep the NIT hopes alive.
I don't
know about that.
And if the women are hosts in the tournament, I'm not sure they can play at home anyway.
Oh, that's right.
I guess it's possible, but I'm not sure it's a cinch. Maybe the first game they could. We'll see.
All right,
Indiana's women's items and now fresh seafood. Chop Shop Market and Table has the largest selection of in-house made products around and everything you need to make a gourmet meal at home. Or pick out a tomahawk steak or a grouper filet and enjoy it cooked to perfection in Chop Shop Steakhouse. Chop Shop Market and Table, a part of the Wild Food Group, is your butcher, baker, and fish house, no matter where you live.
This segment is brought to you by the Ugly Grouper. Welcome back to Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Hey, welcome back. Thank you so much for being with us on this Valentine's Day. I hope it's a good one for you. If you haven't remembered, you better go out and get something for your better half. Or do like I would always do. Wait until tomorrow. Save yourselves a bunch of money.
You know what? I was in the grocery store today and I saw those King's cakes that are the things from New Orleans.
Oh, yes. I saw them just the other day.
75% off today.
I was at a Kroger the other day and I saw this exact same thing. I didn't think of it that way, but you dead on. Perfect. But that's why. That's Captain Rick Bozich for those of you happen to just be joining us from WDRB.com. Was one of the things I was talking to Rick about in the break is at WDRB in Louisville, WDRB TV in Louisville, they're a station that I remember when they came on the air. This was before Fox was around, and now they're a Fox affiliate. But WDRB was basically like a cartoon and reruns station is the best way to call it. They showed cartoons during the day and lots of reruns. Now they are probably the number one. I don't even have any rankings in front of me, but the number one sports go-to in that town. But they've done something that other stations have tried and not been successful at, but they are successful, having guys like Rick Bozich, who was a sports writer for the Courier Journal. Did you also write for the Times or just the Courier?
I started with the Times and then I went to the Courier Journal. Yeah.
See, that's back when the days when there were two newspapers. One came out in the morning and one came out in the afternoon.
Hard to believe.
I know that's crazy, right? Crazy things. But and Eric is the same. Eric Crawford, whose father actually worked in TV in Louisville.
Byron.
Great segments on the road with Byron Crawford, would just have great stories back when you could have great stories, when you were allowed to go out and really flesh a good story out. But anyway, they brought in Rick and Eric, and it works, and it has worked, and it continues to work. But it does not seem like many other stations in other markets, like Indianapolis, for example, that's been successful for whatever reason.
Yeah, I know they did it with Bob Kravitz for like 3 or 4 years, and then went a different direction. Bob went to the Athletic, I think, at the time. Who knows why? Every situation's different. We're lucky here that we have management that committed to it and invested the resources in it and promoted us and gives us an opportunity to keep doing things. And it's stayed with us now it'll be 12 years in June. I think it's been tried in Raleigh. I think it may be in Oklahoma City. There have been a few spots, but not many. And, I feel fortunate that they took a chance on us, and I'm glad it's worked out.
I think a big part of it has to be, and because your coverage bleeds over, you cover all three, Louisville, Kentucky, and Indiana. But being in that Bermuda Triangle of basketball has to be a big part of that.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's the three of the most passionate college bases, 10 college fan bases in the country, for sure. There's no professional sports here other than soccer. There's a Major League women's soccer team here and a minor league baseball and soccer team. But, UK, U of L, and IU are for the fans throughout the area, the professional teams. Basketball first, football second, although the football, I would say it's pretty close now at most of the schools in terms of, especially Kentucky and Louisville, in terms of the interest in football. And we write about that all year round, and people, enjoy reading it, responding, talking back, giving us their opinion. And I've always said this is the best. If you're a college sports journalist, this is the best place to be in the country, because you get exposed to Louisville in the ACC, Kentucky in the SEC, and Indiana in the Big Ten. And there's not any market in the country that has that kind of variety of opportunities.
Pat Forty, a very, very well-known writer, also a resident of Louisville. which is kind of crazy. But you add all of the things that you just mentioned, plus the PGA owns Valhalla Golf Course there, which is an unusual situation. You've got the Derby, and then, of course, right up the road in Indianapolis, you have the 500, the NCAA, and Indianapolis is just a sports hub as well. So probably, to me, the two greatest sports cities in the country are Indianapolis and Louisville because of all that they bring, of all that is located there. I don't know that there's an area anywhere else that has all of that.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on what you like. If you like pro sports more, there obviously are, because we don't have any pro sports here in Louisville. But if college sports are what you like and you like a mixture of the two, as you mentioned, the two big national sporting events in the country in the spring, the Derby followed by the Indy 500, and this year the PGA is actually in Louisville this year. And since they moved it in May, it goes Derby, 2 weeks later PGA, and then 2 weeks later Indy 500. So May will be action packed.
Crazy. Looking forward to that. Long before we get to that, though, there's a month called March that has long been lived for by everybody that we just talked about. Unfortunately, only one of the programs will be participating in that, Kentucky, and their fans are not even happy.
Yeah, they just ended a 3-game home losing streak. First time ever they'd lost 3 games in a row in Rupp Arena after they lost last weekend to Gonzaga. I think they're in 5th place in the SEC, which is not where they want to be, especially when you've got 7 guys listed at some websites as being top 100 players for the NBA draft. They've been a really bad defensive team all year and given up too many points. And some empty seats last night at Rupp for the 9:00 game against Ole Miss. And they get ready to go.
That's a sign.
Yeah, it is.
Always a sign.
It is a sign. Somebody sent me a picture of empty seats in the upper deck at Rupp. And they got booed a little bit over the weekend when they lost to Gonzaga. There's definitely unhappiness. It's not just on this season. It's this season preceded by last year where they lost in the Sweet 16 and they lost 10 games or more. And the year before that, they lost to St. Peter's. And the year before that, they had a losing year. So, as great as Calipari was from 2010 to 2015, when he first started at Kentucky, he hadn't been back to the Final Four since 2015, that team that was undefeated before they lost to Wisconsin. So that's not going over well in Big Blue Nation.
No, and you're always chasing that greatness, no matter what you're a fan, an Indiana fan or whatever. It's that you're chasing. And I'm not a Calipari fan, but if they get rid of him and they brought somebody else in, they're still going to be chasing that. And then 3, and just like Indiana is right now, you get 3 years in, and when it hasn't happened, it hasn't happened. And buddy, here comes the hammer, and it's just, that's the nature of the beast. And now it is harder for those guys like Calipari to maintain that, because this sport has just leveled out unbelievably. I've mentioned this a couple times today, but when the AP poll came out this week, there are 14 teams that I look at that have a serious chance of making the Final Four, and that does not include 2 teams like made it last year. So God knows what will really end up happening. Watch it end up being chalk, which would be unbelievably me. But there are legitimately, 14 teams that you look at and you're like, oh yeah, they could make the Final Four. Oh yeah, they could make the Final Four. and it's nuts to be able to enjoy that.
Yeah, I mean, I think going on at Kentucky is they look at the SEC standings and they are tied for 5th with Florida, and they say, now wait a minute, Alabama won the league last year and they lost 3 or 4 of their best players and they're still in first place. And South Carolina really wasn't any good last year. They have a second-year coach and they're 9-2 and they beat Kentucky and they're tied for first place. And Bruce Pearl's at Auburn. He's consistently really good. And Rick Barnes is at Tennessee, and he's ahead of Kentucky and beat UK in Lexington, and like, what's going on here? And conversely at Indiana, it's you can look at the standings and say, now, hey, wait a minute, Minnesota is ahead of Indiana in the standings. They were not picked to be there. They haven't been very good for a while. They've moved ahead. Nebraska is playing exciting basketball, already beat Indiana. They are, ahead of Indiana. Northwestern is now they beat Indiana every year. I mean, has Mike Woodson ever beaten Northwestern? I don't think he has.
I don't think he has.
Right. So it's like, what's going on here? So I would say for Indiana, the thing is, I think it was always realistic to expect they were going to take a step backwards this year, but not a step backwards this severe. I mean, I think what people thought the floor would be is that they would carry on the possibility of making the NCAA tournament until the last week or two of the season, where realistically, I think we both thought a month ago that this team was not going to make the NCAA tournament. I mean, we saw it from the very beginning when you watched the Florida Gulf Coast games and the Army games and the Morehead State games and said, that's why their computer ranking's so bad. They didn't beat the bad teams on their schedule badly enough because they weren't able to, right?
They struggled to beat them. They actually struggled to beat them, to hold them off. And continue to do that. And so now you let mediocre to below mediocre teams either have a shot at or beat you, which makes it even worse because their computer numbers are not good. So it just continues to carry on. What does Indiana have to do, and more specifically, Mike Woodson, between this season and next season? Because there is, no matter what any fan might think, there is no chance of anything changing. So get that thought out of your mind.
He needs to go in there. He needs to get Derek Queen. I mean, and I don't know if they're going to get him or not. He supposedly, it's a 4-team race still. You go back and, I mean, Maryland's doing even worse than Indiana, so I don't know if they've gained any advantage this year or not, other than that's.
I think it was a 2-team race, and the seasons that Maryland and Indiana have
opened the door to Houston
yes.
and Kansas. Probably has. And they have to be aggressive, intelligent, and right in the transfer portal and get the right people. And I mean, 2 guards who can really play at a Big Ten level. Penn State's done that. Other schools in the league have done that. Boo Buie was a transfer, I think, who came into Northwestern. Am I correct? He's been there, 3 years or whatever, how many years he's been there. You got to find somebody who can come in and be an immediate impact guy, because
Lance Jones at Purdue was an unbelievably low-rated transfer.
Right. So you got to be good in your evaluation.
That is something that I have said a lot. I wonder if this staff.
Boo Buie's not a transfer guy. Chase Audige was the transfer guy. So Boo Buie was a recruit that they developed. But you got to.
What is that you speak of?
Boo Buie was a guy they developed over 4 years out of Albany, New York. Chase Audige was the guy they got out of the transfer portal, who was a stud. So I was wrong there. But he also got Chris Collins got Brooks Barnheiser out of Lafayette, who I know is a guy that Indiana looked at in recruiting wise, but didn't seem like they were sold on.
Good enough.
Didn't look like they were sold on Braden Smith. And those were really bad miscalculations.
And that's what does this staff under Mike Woodson, who has no college experience, not only does he have no college experience, was completely removed from the college game for 4 decades. So I wonder if this staff has the ability to identify talent that does not have a 4 or 5 star next to their name. That's what they've gone after, which I understand why, but you also have to do the other thing, what you just talked about, finding those guys that are not 4 and 5 stars, but actually can be and become that with the right production and guidance by the staff. You go back to Victor Oladipo. He was a 3-star, and 2 years he's a freaking number 2 pick in the NBA draft. Tom Crean, for all of his detriments, one thing he could do was hit home runs on hires. He found guys that people overlooked. OG Anunoby wasn't even on the damn list of players to watch at an event he went to watch him at. Juwan Morgan.
Nick Zeisloff.
I mean, just there's so many. Now you've got for every two of those, you had Tim Priller and Grant Gillon, but
Jeremiah April.
Yeah. So, but they've got to find that. What's up next for you, Rick?
It's a good question. I think this weekend Louisville and Kentucky are both on the road, so I'll be watching games on TV. I'm not coming up for the Northwestern game on Sunday. I'm still going to try and get up for one more game, but probably be later in the year, just watching basketball and getting ready for – I'm going to the ACC tournament this year, so getting ready for that.
30 seconds for this one. What's your thoughts on the White Sox looking to move downtown?
I think they do need a new stadium, and I think they need to create some buzz around them. That's super expensive, though, so I don't know if they're going to be able to get that done. But today, pitchers and catchers have reported. I'm happy.
I'm old enough to have seen a game in the old Comiskey Park.
Oh, that's not that old. It was around in 1990.
It was around for 100 years, too.
I wish I would have got to Crosley, but I never got to Crosley. All right, you guys have a great week. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Rick Bozich from WDRB.com. Grateful to have him. Kyle Neddenriep from Indy Star and Dylan Sinn from the Fort Wayne Journal-Gazette. We're grateful for those guys. Most importantly, thanks for each and every one of you. Go out and have yourselves a great and happy Valentine's Day. Thanks to John, the producer, for keeping us between the white lines. We're back tomorrow with Michael Mango, former NCAA attorney. We're going to talk about some of those issues, along with Shannon Griffith, some football, and other things as well. Until then, thank you so much. I'm Jim Coyle. I will see you on the radio.
Thanks for listening to Indiana Sports Beat Radio. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube page for more clips and team coverage of Indiana basketball, football, and more. You can also find full episodes and tons of other content on thehoosier.com. We'll see you next time for another edition of Indiana Sports Beat Radio.